Se habrá peliculones como Las Vírgenes Suicidas, la primera película en la carrera de Sofía Coppola, que yo no lo sabía, pero estaba inspirada en hechos reales, y hablé con su productor, con Chris Hanley, que me recordó un poco cómo fue la historia de origen de toda esta película, cuánto influyó Francis Ford Coppola y cómo fue trabajar con esta talentosísima directora llamada Sofía Coppola.
We now return to Mira Akian and Contre with our latest interview.
Roberta is literally the one responsible for creating Sofia Coppola's directorial career and screenwriting career.
Look, she's laughing. He made her laugh.
So I discussed with Dan Halstead this novel, which I heard was excellent, called The Virgin Suicides. And this was in 94, 95. And Disney had the rights, and there had been an earlier screenplay that Dan Halstead had arranged, and they'd set it up with Disney, but the rights had recently reverted. So I was introduced to Jeff Eugenides, the author of the novel, and I obtained the rights. And part of the deal was that Dan Halstead, for making the introduction, would also be a co-producer on the movie, which indeed he is if you look at the credits.
So much has been said about the girls over the years.
Those girls have a bright future ahead of them.
But we have never found an answer.
One day, I got a message from Sofia that she had just, to see what she could do with a book that she had been in love with called The Virgin Suicides. And that she kind of like had a script, and, she got so enamored to it, she was like, wow, I could really direct this. But Sofia, she was an actress, and she had like Milk Fed, I think a Tokyo-based fashion company that she had founded, and she had done a short that I had never really looked at, and she was creative, but she'd gotten dissed a couple times for her acting prowess in like Godfather 3, which I could care less about. But in any case, my wife Roberta, who was the founder and CEO of Muse Productions, she was like, oh, I'm tired of just pushing this around, not getting it set up, not getting like Natalie Portman in the movie like we thought we would, and and getting sort of kicked around. Just give it to Sofia. And Sofia's going, yeah. And I'm going, and I called Jeff Eugenides and was like, what do you think? And she kind of sent the screenplay over. And, it was pretty good. And Sofia kept saying, yeah, but Chris, I'm a girl, and I can see this way from, the character's point of view. Roberta's going, Chris, you got to give it to Sofia. You got to give it to Sofia. So it's like a Friday, and these girls are just beating me up, my own wife. Okay, Sofia was like, wow, am I going to be able to pull this off? I mean, she's never directed, and it's like, I'm going to get the whole thing like, oh, it's daddy's girl and this and that. But I'm thinking, I just spent nearly 2 years trying to set this movie up, and I didn't attach any actors or anything. And we'd invested about 120,000 at that point in rights and, doing all that kind of stuff. So I go, okay, here's the deal. I say to Sofia and Roberta, if Francis wants it, I'll split the entire rights and the producing with him 50-50, but he has to give me 50% of my sunk costs before Monday morning. And if he does, then it's Friday now. If he gives me half of my money back that I put in the movie, He and I can produce the movie together, and we'll split the rights 50-50, and Sophia will be attached as the director, and we'll use her screenplay. And I go, that's the deal. And on Monday morning, a check for $60,000 showed up, written to Muse Productions, and I deposited it, and then we cut a deal, and so now Francis is in the movie. So he's my producing partner, along with Danny Halstead, who set the whole thing up.
Even then, as teenagers, we tried to put the pieces together. We still can't.
Did someone advise her like not to start her career with this dark story?
No, that never took place.
Yeah.
And nobody. And that certainly wouldn't be me. My wife Roberta wrote the original drafts of the American Psycho screenplay. In fact, we wanted to tone it up a little.
Oh.
We thought Jeff Eugenides and I read Sophia's screenplay and thought it was pretty good, but because she was the first-time screenwriter, she gave us the opportunity to give our edit notes and approval before she sent it out. And I had extensive notes in the novel, like 14 pages, like 1, 2, 3, that I had already had for developing the screenplay already for 18 months or something like that. So, and then I'd also, underlining sections and what we needed to have in and everything, to interpret the book into screenplay form. So I copied all those notes, and then Jeff gave notes as well to the screenplay. And then Sophia wrote back, and then we did one more round.
You're not even old enough to know how bad life gets.
Obviously, Doctor, you've never been a 13-year-old girl.
Interestingly enough, I knew from my, meetings and hangings and discussions with Jeff Eugenides that it was loosely based on girls, 4 or 5 girls that he went to high school that were part of the same family. And so we actually went there one day and walked into the high school and pulled out the yearbook that had Jeff Eugenides in it, and found the girls that it was based on, and took still photos.
You mentioned that the book was based on actual girls, but did they commit suicide as well?
I don't recall there being a record of like an entire family of girls that were, died one year, when Jeff was at school. But there were issues of how they weren't allowed out of the house. Jeff Eugenides went to Stanford, and he has a degree in philosophy of religion. He was ordained at one point and going to be a minister, but he looks at existence and the ephemeral or flimsiness of one's life, and how depressions over environmental and other issues can affect people in general, especially youth. And in his period, apparently these girls were, they had a kind of a limited social, James Woods ultimately played the professor, and he has a degree from MIT and knows the very mathematics that would have been a part of the story. And to my memory, the father actually was a mathematics professor or teacher at that high school. And the mother apparently, they didn't like the girls partying, smoking weed, hanging out with the boys, making out, kissing. And there was this allegedly an issue with the prom and having a sense of freedom. And I believe there were issues with the elm trees, like dying from Dutch elm disease and cutting them down. I can verify the fact that in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, around the mansions where the story took place, and high school where the girls went, and Jeff Eugenides grew up and was in high school, that they'd lost a lot of elm trees, sadly, due to the Dutch elm disease.
4 sisters put their own lives in jeopardy.
They'll all be gone by next year.
What about the casting? You mentioned Natalie Portman. Like, did you have any influence in who was going to play who? Or like, what
Well,
happened?
originally, Scarlett Johansson had done, I don't remember, was it River Runs Through, Horse Whisperer. And she was young and beautiful, and that was Sofia Coppola's first choice, but Scarlett didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Or for whatever, the powers that be said it wasn't for her. So, we've met with Michelle Williams and a few other people. Natalie Portman wasn't accessible. And, it was Sofia's first movie, so it's not like you could just call, up an agent and, oh, wow, that's the daughter of Francis Coppola, I'm going to jump in the movie. It was still not so easy to cast. Sofia was reluctant. She had certain people in mind, I'm not sure, but I mean, Kirsten Dunst, was like, well, I don't know. And we like Kirsten because she had done an interview with the vampire, like when she was 12 or something, and she nailed it. So we knew her. Joaquin Phoenix's manager had recommended Kirsten Dunst and also Josh Hartnett. She really wanted Scarlett. It wasn't happening. We were kind of, it's not like, oh, I don't want her. She was like, oh, I don't know. And we had just met Michelle Williams. We were in Toronto, so whoever hit the Four Seasons Hotel where all the actors were staying, we would grab them, and meet it. And then Sofia, we got to meet, so we met Michelle Williams, and she was like great, but she was like a 40-year-old divorcee when she was like 16. As soon as she met Kirsten face to face, at the end of the meeting, she goes, oh, she's the one. I don't know what I was thinking. She's perfect.
We would never be sure about the sequence of events.
Francis would come and visit, I don't remember. We shot for 4 or 5 weeks, and we had prep for 3 weeks. So yeah, we had we were all together.
And did he like give her any advice? Like maybe you can do
not
this?
Particularly.
Oh yeah.
No.
It was her movie.
Yeah, I mean, Sophia's not particularly in need of advice. I mean, you can see now.
Yeah.
She wasn't then, and she isn't now. I don't think she's changed that much. She was pretty defended. She's not very. Like my wife Roberta and myself and Sophia.
Yeah.
We were
determined.
Once you get a vision, she knows how to stick to it, and she can see it while she's shooting it. She can see what it's going to be when it finishes. She foresees the editing.
Think that only yesterday I was cheerful, bright and gay, looking forward to.
Her dad had suggested that there wasn't any reason to buy all these music rights for the music tracks, some of which were actually referenced in the way the boys, from the point of view of never being able to touch or feel the girls except through this emotional bond, the way they communicated was playing soundtrack tracks over the phone to each other. So one would play one song and they were in love with each other. The whole town's in love with these girls. Francis had said that, we don't need these songs. I don't know if it was like a budget thing, and I was like, no way. I mean, and Sophia was, I told him to, shove it, fuck that. I'm not going with that. So that was kind of one of his suggestions. And then I think on the editing, there was an editor that he had provided that was very good, and according to Sophia, was excellent at following her editing instructions. But to my knowledge, other than some of the music thing and maybe a couple behind the scenes comments on tightening it up, Frances didn't really have a voice in it at all.
It would be so fine to see your face at my door.
Why do you think this movie still resonates with us, and what would you say is the legacy of the film?
Well, I think this film, as do others that resonate, some of which I produced, why they reach a certain cult classic level. They capture the period during which the movie was made, and in the case of Sophia's young point of view, this one was, fresh and more of an open wound, and first-time director where they're experiencing, this life of filmmaking and art form of filmmaking for the first time, and that made it more accessible to let the environment spill in, and the period of the story in the 70s was something that Sophia felt sympathetic with herself, and she was familiar with the music tracks that were part of the movie that she created. I felt at the time that it was probably understated and appreciated because it didn't have the media attention that a second or third round would have if one stayed consistent with the filmmaking process that she had established for herself. And that ultimately, as the years went by, it would come off as one of her best, if not her best works. I think that ultimately just kept sending a message, and it's for a longer period of time. It's like, in the heart of like the turn of the century when independent cinema was like something that it's not defined in the same way with, new forms of distribution like streaming, and this golden age of what I would call independent cinema, or the art film, as opposed to the golden age of a kind of independent cinema that Francis Coppola and Scorsese and Bob Evans at Paramount Studios was in favor of these kind of arty movies that were also mainstream. This is actually arty movies that aren't mainstream, that affect the mainstream vision of what a movie can be or should be.